Just get the non out of my teeth.
My cat. No. You're gonna have to go in there later. I'm on a podcast.
I'll leave out of the kitchen.
So the first question, I'm looking at this sheet and I don't have any questions on it.
My eyelash extensions are falling into my eye.
If it makes you feel better, my tooth is broken.
Oh, we are such a mess. Good evening or morning or afternoon or whatever time of day it is for you. This is Musically Abroad. I am the Naarah half of Musically Abroad.
I'm the Megan half of Musically Abroad.
And we have just come to the conclusion that when we do podcasts, we should do it when it is morning for Megan, or no, morning for me and night for Megan. Because I'm not a night person. I'm not a night person, and I will fall asleep promptly after this podcast is over. And Megan is not a morning person. So next time we'll make sure we pull a switch.
You guys are gonna get an interesting podcast this episode.
Very interesting.
So today we're talking about college and specifically comparing it to our 5 years of teaching. We are talking about what I learned from college versus our 5 years of teaching. What has worked, what hasn't worked, what you wish they would have told us in college, and what you wish that we could have done in college that would have better prepared us. So the first question, I'm looking at this sheet and I don't have any questions on it. I'm like, why am I looking at it?
It's for effect. Just hold the paper. The first question. That's hilarious.
I'm so sorry for people that are watching this because this is the content you're getting. Absolutely.
Quality, well planned, well thought out content on my part.
Oh my God, it's too early.
It's too late.
I know. Okay, so I think the first question we'll ask is, what is something that you learned from college that benefited you?
I've been so out of school mode because of Chinese New Year. It has been a whole week in my brain. Go back to a couple weeks ago. Something from college that benefited me. I feel like we had choral methods classes because we're choral people, choir music people, and our choral methods class like gave us a lot of tips on things that are important in like teaching and like pacing and like scheduling a rehearsal. So for me, I feel like the thing that I use from college still this day, like in every class, is like how to pace teaching like a piece of music. And so I know not everyone watching is a music teacher, but just like figuring out how to chunk different pieces and choosing repertoire that has repetitive sections and things like that. So those are things that I still use in rehearsals every day. Is like how to pace a rehearsal lesson plan. That's something big.
I think the one for me was we were told this to always have a routine, like practice your routines. If whatever your classroom management is, practice it with the kids and then don't throw it to the side. Constantly go back over the rules and expectations, constantly practice your routines, and then positive reinforcement for those that are following it without you asking, to kind of keep that classroom culture of when I go into whatever class I'm in, this is what the teacher wants me to do. I know my expectations. If a sub comes in, I still know the expectations. Whether or not they follow it, though, when a sub is there, that's a whole nother story.
That's true. That's true.
But at least when you're there, the kids know, okay, I know what goes on when I walk in the door and when I leave.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that would be my biggest one. Second question would be, what is something they told you that you tried in the classroom and it failed?
Ooh, that's a good question. For me, creating classroom rules, like, and creating them with the students.
Really?
Because from what I've experienced with my kids, when we like create classroom rules together, it, I mean, like we refer back to them, but it becomes more like I don't know, like I feel like they don't really take it as seriously. There's still rules, like it's not like classroom's chaos, but it's more when things happen, like we like they understand my expectations and what I like the things I want from them, but it's not like I have like here are the three rules in music class written on the wall and we refer back to them. Like for me, I started with that, like I used that my first year, and it just felt like I would refer back to it and the kids didn't really take it seriously. I tried like having them create it by themselves or like create it as a group and then display them, and they still don't take it as seriously. I still use them with my my advisory because we like it's a really short time period. We only have 30 minutes of advisory, and we get into really deep, like in-depth discussions about things that can be kind of personal. So like on that end, I use them because it's so short and it's easy to be like, nope, we're referring back to this like. But in my classroom, I feel like the most important thing has been creating like a classroom culture rather than having the three rules. And like once the classroom culture is set, the kids kind of know like this doing this would disrupt our classroom like for lack of a better word like ecosystem, I guess. And so like it's almost like that is what they take seriously is like our classroom is a safe environment, it's a positive environment. If I do this, it will disrupt that flow, and so I don't want to do that. And so that's kind of been my focus more than like, oh no no no, look at the rule, oh no no, rule number 2 says. So for
Right.
me that doesn't work. It could be also because I have middle schoolers, so it's easier to talk through certain things. Like when things go wrong, it's easy to kind of level with them and discuss like why what they did was wrong and like how we can fix it for the future. So yeah, for me, not rules, but classroom ecosystem.
And I think it's interesting because we're the opposite in that. My kids don't I set my rules, but I've seen it in the other classrooms where they create the rules and it works for them. I think for the little kids it really works, or at least for my experience, the elementary kids it really works for. I can see it not working for older kids. I think this is going to be controversy, but
Oh, tea, spill the tea.
we were always taught that singing was the number one important thing in an elementary music classroom, and it's not. I
No,
ooh,
detail.
sorry if you're from those,
Detail.
like if you believe it, I'm so sorry. I do think singing is important, don't get me wrong. I totally think it's important. And I do maybe 50% of my lessons have singing involved in them. My K through 2 sing every single week because I am a strong believer of little kids being influenced by singing. I think that's important. But I went in my first year, and even still to this day, and once my kids hit third grade, they get uncomfortable, so I don't do it as much. And I'm not pushing my kids, I'm not forcing them to sing. Why would I do that? I want my kids to enjoy the class. So they'll really focus on it during February when we have our Black History show, and they're fine with that. They totally get it and they like the songs. Another thing that, Nay, you'll probably agree with me, is we should use music that is relevant to them. That's something we
Say it
weren't
again. The people in the back. Say it again.
taught. But I feel like that wasn't taught in schools, and we were given like these cutesy things, and then they'd be like, this is great for fifth grade, and I'm like, okay, cool. Then I try it with fifth grade, and I'm like, oh no, that's awful. Like these kids are not the same kids that you and I were in fifth grade. And I feel like that would have worked for us in fifth grade because we were taught to do things differently and we were into different things. But kids nowadays, they have access to TikTok, social media. They're finding music.
Megan.
Finding
Yes.
music so incredibly fast. So why am I bringing Mary Had a Little Lamb? No, like let me find something else. My kids like EDM. They love rap and hip hop, so we have to find a lot of clean versions of stuff. But I don't see anything wrong with that if you're able to teach the stuff and they're excited.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes, yes.
that would be
Every
my thing.
everything you just said, I agree with 1,000%. And I don't know if I would have agreed with it had I not been teaching middle school general music for the past 4 years because like I don't do just singing in my classes, although singing is a lot of what we do. Like I make sure they sing. But also like you're right about the discomfort part because like a lot of times when my kids come to me, they come from so many different backgrounds in singing and music, whatever. And so when I put them to sing, a lot of them come thinking they can't sing or they're like uncomfortable singing in front of other people. And so like it's a lot of like getting them to see that they can be singers, less than it is about their technique or like making sure they're singing all the time. Like no, we listen to music, we drum, we play xylophones, we do other things. Singing we definitely still do, but it's definitely not the most important thing that they do. I think
Right.
the overall musical experience is the most important part. So I agree a billion trillion percent with what you just said. That's yes, 100%. One thing, this is kind of a more musical based thing, but there are so many things that we've been taught and that we've used for any music teachers out there who are like singing people. Like we've been taught so many times about like how to teach kids to raise the soft palate and how to. This also could be controversial too, honestly. How to teach kids to raise a soft palate and how to teach kids to use their diaphragm. And so much of it just causes tension and it creates bad singing and kids can't access their upper registers and then they think they can't sing and then they stop singing, and then or hurt their voices. So I do not teach my kids to raise their soft palate.
There's nothing wrong. I literally have I instead of saying that, because first of all, my kids don't understand that word.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how much you break it down, they don't understand it. I always say there's a rainbow, and that when we sing, we lift to the top of the rainbow, because that's where the gold is being hidden. It's
Oh,
not
I like that.
it's
I
not
like
on
that
the
a
end,
lot.
it's at the top. And for some reason, all of a sudden they're like, got it. And
Yeah.
it works. And then with the diaphragm, I just tell my kids deep breaths. Like,
Mhm. My kids know what the diaphragm is, and they know like I was surprised because like I didn't really when I was their age I didn't know what diaphragm is,
mhm.
but like I never actually call it a diaphragm. I call it dantian, which is Chinese for diaphragm, and so I always say breathe from your dantian, but I never really explain how, and I never really explain like I explain what it does and why we need to, but I don't explain like exactly how, because if
Yeah.
the kids don't have like a specific vision of what your body is set up like or it's incorrect or I explain it and they have a different visual of what it looks like, that's where they get messed up and what causes tension. So I really don't talk too much about it. I feel like especially in middle school at this age their voices are changing so much.
Yeah.
The focus isn't necessarily for me on like raised soft palate and diaphragm. It's on like learning how to use like your different registers, and like how to access them, which is helped by diaphragm, but that's not the first thing I talk about. That's breathing we talk about, but the first thing I talk about is like where those placements are and where your voices are and how to, accept the fact that your like higher register sounds like you're whispering right now, and that's okay. Like acceptance is the first part. And then as they get comfortable with that, then we start introducing diaphragm talk. And if they get okay with that, then we start introducing soft palate talk. But we don't go there first. So in middle school, I don't talk about diaphragm. I feel like that's a conversation for after the voices start settling in more. So we talked
I,
about that in school, and that's something I do not use, even though
I
it's
think
probably
there are
controversial.
other ways to teach that concept without saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get old enough, the right people will tell them and they'll be like, oh, that's what Miss Calendar was talking about. Oh, okay, I get it. That's what she meant when she was having us do this. Like they'll get their
Right.
light bulb moment later.
Because
And
if they're not singing in their head voice and they're not matching pitch still, what is raising your soft palate gonna do for that?
right.
Like those things need to come first. And
Right.
I remember when I was in middle school, I love my middle school teacher, and I don't think she'll watch this, but if she does, I love you so much, my middle school teacher. You know who you are. But she taught in the way where it's like you put the light bulb in the back of your throat and like I that just created all kinds of tongue tension because instead of raising my soft palate, I would push my tongue down. And
Mhm.
until college, I thought that was how you were supposed to do it. I didn't realize I was lowering my tongue. I thought I was raising my soft palate. And
Right.
so I just created all kinds of tongue tension that like really delayed my ability to like sing in my head voice and like to sing open, and I was always using my diaphragm wrong. I always thought that you're taking a big breath and you're pushing air through your like you're pushing the air out, but that's not how you use breath support appropriately. And so like having those, oh, breathe with from your diaphragm, do this, and then oh, this is how you raise your soft palate, created so much tension for me because I didn't have a picture of what my body was really doing.
Right.
So I do not have those conversations until they are older. Um, their high school teacher will talk to them about that, and my goal is to make them like feel that they can be singers,
Yeah.
that they can access their head voice, all that kind of stuff. So that's very musical talk, but those are
And
things that we learned in school. That
these are controversial things.
well,
Like,
maybe it should be the controversial things that we don't do in our classrooms.
I mean, they're controversial, but let's be real, every teacher is different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, again, if you're one of those teachers that everything we're saying, you're like, but I do that and I'm successful, ignore us. You're one of those teachers that you're like, oh, I'm the opposite of you and these things are successful. Great. Do you, boo? Whatever is successful, this is just based on what we've done. And we've both been in interesting situations and unique situations that have caused us to be this way.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I'm going to make us go into our professor's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
If we were back at college, and I'm not going to say our college name, just to keep it quiet. We were in their position. What would we tell future music educators? Honestly, what I'm going to tell them is that what they see in student teaching is not true. It is icing on a cake, and to try out these activities that are great, but they need to watch their teacher, their coordinating teacher, and see what they do and see the rules and the expectations and the classroom dynamic. Mm-hmm. And then when they go in that first year, they've got to be tough. Because I have seen so many first year teachers, and like even when I student taught in a beautiful school, absolutely no issues. I was teaching by myself on the first day, and the kids did everything I wanted them to do. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to be a great teacher. Mm-hmm. And then my first year, within a week, I had 2 fights. And I was like, oh, this is not going to work. And so I had to go complete opposite. It's not what student teaching was. And I wish they would have told us that and just told us to take every moment just to watch your coordinating teachers. If you can go see other teachers in school, go to schools that are also considered rough. Like, that's something we also missed. I work in a school that people consider rough. Every time I tell people where I work, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. That must be so hard. It's not hard at all.
Say that? I'm so sorry for you.
Welcome to the stereotypes of working in a South Side school. South Side is supposed to be rough, and it's not at all. Mm-hmm. You just have teachers that are struggling with classroom management. So, but you need to go and see that. You need to see what these schools,
Megan, what a big fat truth that was. It's not that the kids are rough. The teachers are struggling with classroom management.
But then there are some schools where the teachers on the South Side have that classroom management. On top of that their classroom culture is incredible. You need to see the stereotypical rough schools, because what if you're like me, who taught in a beautiful North Side school where the kids were, and then I was thrown into a South Side school that was considered rough. I never saw what a South Side or a rough school was. So where was that training? Where was that exposure? Why didn't we get the chance?
Piano skills aren't that important. I mean, they are, but they're not. They're not really. They are, but they're not. You don't have to be able to play your kids' parts, SATB, on the piano. You really shouldn't. They should be reading their music on their own.
Yeah, that's the tea.
Piano skills are important because it's helpful to be able to play along with the kids, especially if you're teaching younger kids and they're doing a song in unison, to help them really feel the musicality. It's helpful, but it's not necessary. Especially if that's not your forte. If your forte is forte. If your forte is if you're a choir teacher, for example, which would be the only reason you would be using this device anyway. Um, our forte should be like teaching our kids to be self-sufficient and be able to start reading music on their own and read music by themselves. And if you can't play piano, I know this isn't ideal, but you can always play a track until you can get an accompanist to play it for you. But I remember walking to my first year, and it was in like a mentor kind of situation, my first like full year teaching in Korea. And my like co-teacher was a pianist, and so she would kind of like play everyone's part, which is not, I mean, that's, I had a lot of teachers in my past who have done that too. And so I learned to love music that way. And so I'm not saying it's like the wrong way, because I am now a musical person, music teacher, and I, was taught music, like repertoire, by rote a lot of the time. And there's always talk about like rote versus like rote learning versus like, kids doing it on their own, and which one is better. And I think they both have their place. But like I was not good enough as a teacher because I couldn't play piano. So I would like go home, and I would stay after school at the practice rooms and practice piano and practice playing the parts before I got to school. And I wouldn't play very well at all still, and it wasn't good. My first year in China, I tried to do that again, didn't work, and I was like, you know what? This time it's my classroom, so I can make things work how I want. And I made sure that my kids learned how to read music, how to read music, how to find the key signatures, how to read intervals. And it took some time to build that up, because like going from like teaching them by rote to doing like just sight reading takes a long time. But like now at this point, my students, I rarely play their parts. And they are super self-sufficient and able to read music on their own. And it's less work for me. Like, why am I playing all their parts by rote? Like, so for me, piano skills were really touched on a lot in college, and they are important because it's important to be able to play something for them, or like play chords or play warm-ups. But like when it comes to learning music, I don't think like playing your part in like being able to play each part by hand is necessary or helpful. It's probably more detrimental, because in the long run, your kids rely on the piano. When you're not playing piano, they forget how to read music, and that's not good. So
Good old class piano days.
class piano. And I will say, I now have learned like just because like based on what my kids need, I can accompany my students on piano a lot better. It's not perfect, I'm not a pianist, but I can accompany them like with a lot of the piano score. Some things I make up on my own, but I'm improving at piano more and more, because I feel like I'm not forcing myself to need to play certain things. Like I'm playing what my kids need, and because I'm kind of slowly progressing, it's year 4, and like if I can get a piece of music like a couple weeks before the kids perform or sing or are learning the piece, I could probably accompany them, which is like my first year I was like, what? That's impossible. So
Everything we did not learn in class piano. Although I loved, y'all know, I love piano. I love
I know.
piano. I was fun.
Yeah. It is fun. Like I enjoy it now more.
Well, and we had what I would have wished we could have had in our that one piano that we were all in together, that somehow I was teaching the class at one point, which
I
why?
remember that. I remember that.
Why? Like I should not be teaching. I was not that skilled. I just happened to be the one that had experience. But what I wish we could have done in that piano is, once we learned scales and everything and different warm-ups, which I think was exactly, I wish we could have learned how to look at like music, and not just like the stuff that we were trying to play, like no, like stuff that we would use in our classrooms, and how to take it and not learn the parts, but how to work accompaniments. So we could at least, that would have been so helpful.
Say it again.
Oh,
Okay, this is off on a tangent, but to those people out there who are like struggling in class piano, let me explain to you. When you get into your choral classroom, all you need to know is how to play warm-ups, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in any key. That's important. That is important to be able to, go up the scale and play a pentascale in any key. That's important. Other thing is important, once you get the pentascale, is like being able to play chords. Because if you can like analyze the chords of a piece of music and you just play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the key of the song you're playing and just the chords, That's better than nothing. And then as like me, that's where I started. I started with just playing block chords, analyzing the piece of music, writing in, oh, this is an A major, this is a D, whatever. And
Right.
just playing the root in my left hand and the chord in my right hand and playing that along with them. And then as I got comfortable with that, then I started like slowly incorporating, oh, look, there, this rhythm is here. So I can play the chord and add this little thing here. And then I can play the chord. And then as that goes on, like, okay, I'm more comfortable now. So now I can kind of play like just the root and the bass and play the melody or the accompaniment from
Right.
the treble clef. And then slowly it's like, oh, well, I can do that. Now I can add the bass clef. And then you can start accompanying. So there's no need to put pressure on yourself to
Right.
be this amazing pianist out of college. Like you will get there, and it's based on what your kids need ultimately.
Look,
So
I was the one that ended up teaching the class like half the year. Don't know why again, because I was not that great. I could do a little bit. I was able to do a little bit, but I was
yeah,
not.
you're pretty good. You're good. You do
I don't
well.
I don't play anymore.
Mm.
I play the piano for the kids as a reward. And it'll be when we're doing a game like Grizzly Bear and we're playing the loud and quiet game. And I'll
Mhm.
play just so they can see me. And that's more of a reward to my kids. Just they're like, oh, you can play the big piano? I sure can. I sure can.
That's
I'm
cute.
not that great. And my poor parents, I'm staying at my parents now, and they have a beautiful baby grand. And I don't touch it. Now I
Mm.
probably won't go downstairs and play it today because now I feel guilty. But
You said it.
my friends, every time everybody comes over, they go straight to that and they all play more than I do. So it's not
Again, it's like based on what your kids need. Like your kids don't need you to play piano for them. It's not what your content is right now. For me, I teach choir and I teach middle school choir. So like for them, especially starting out, they're singing a lot of things in unison. So they'll need something to help them feel the musicality. But when I was teaching high school, but my first year in China, we never played for them. We never played for them. They sight read everything because a lot of the music is SATV, so they can just them reading the music. A lot of time they can feel the musicality from just their singing.
right.
Middle school choir is doing an SATV piece, which is like incredible because we finally have enough voice to split like baritones into a.
Hey,
I call them baritone one, baritone two. Also controversy. I don't use alto, soprano, tenor, bass until they get to high school,
I don't see a problem with that.
so they can switch around. They don't get comfortable being like an alto when they're, and
Exactly.
when they get older, the voices change and whatever. Anyway,
Exactly.
but they're doing SATB, and because they're doing an SATB piece, the we've been doing it for 4 weeks now. The first time they're gonna get piano is when we get back from break. So, but they're
I
gonna, and then it's gonna be so much cooler when we put the piano and they're like,
right. Right.
this
I
is
think
what it sounds like.
see, I also like that too, because then they work, and then they hear the piano and it's those tingles that everybody talks about that
Right,
you get
exactly.
from performing and to savor those tingles.
Mm-hmm.
I like that part.
Things that we wish that we were taught and that we would tell upcoming teachers now. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I think the only thing I feel like our professors did say this, but I do want to re-emphasize or emphasize this to go out there and try things. Just because it didn't work for us and we're not like we didn't like it doesn't mean it won't work for you. Or maybe you are like us, but try what we say and see if it does work or it doesn't. You may be like us and it doesn't work, or it may totally work. You won't really know, and it's going to change from school to school.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at the same school for 5 years. I don't intend to leave anytime soon, but if I switch schools, I might have to change things around.
It
My
changes
rule.
from year to year too.
Yeah,
Like
it does.
your kids will change.
Just don't be afraid to change things around.
Mhm.
Also, don't get stuck in your ways. I think that is something that our professors did tell us, and I have found myself get caught in that situation where I'm like, no, I have to do it the same way because it's what works for me. Like, I want to teach the same lesson every year because it works for me, but don't do that.
And the newest best practices and not being afraid to take like it's we have heard this a lot, but again to emphasize, um, like it's okay for something to completely fail, like a lesson to completely fail. My first 2 years, even 3 years, if a lesson failed, I'd be so hard on myself. Um, Year 4 and 5, if a lesson fails, it's almost like the kids and I laugh together.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that didn't work. That's not working at all. And it's okay if that it just fails. You it fails. The kids will be fine. You go back. You reflect. You don't reflect, and you move. You keep it rolling. You keep it rolling. Like there's no. It really truly is okay for a lesson to bomb. I remember our teachers talking about that as well. But like, it really doesn't hit till like around year 4 that it's all right if things just
Oh,
bomb. It's fine.
I have one more thing.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to reach out to colleagues or professors and ask questions. Just because you're thrown out into the world doesn't mean you don't have resources. That's something because I was stubborn my first year. I literally would only text Naarah. I didn't text anybody else, but I'd always text Nay. But there were so many other teachers out there that could have easily helped me. Don't be afraid to reach out to people.
As a person who did reach out to people a lot, yes, your professors. I mean, think about you as a teacher, right? You like it when your former students, contact you again and like say how they're doing and catch you up with them. And your professors in college were there for you to be in a specific career. So more than just they want to hear how you're doing, they're going to want to help you if you need it.
Right.
So I have reached out to a lot of professors, especially my first 2 years, to ask for help and ask for advice about like both like personal life teacher things and like classroom things, and it was super helpful and it kept me sane. So yes, I 110% agree.
Yep.
Don't be afraid.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, I sound like I'm writing an email, but if you
That's
have
exactly what I say to my students every day. Questions? No. Comments? No. Concerns? No.
if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down in the comments below. Like, subscribe. This is Musically Abroad. I am Megan. This is
Naarah.
and we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.